Hello and welcome to the Rubber Duck Dev Show. I'm Chris.
I'm Crustin.
And I'm Aaron.
All right, and we are going to have a lot of fun tonight talking about experiences with live streaming. Because Aaron just got into the live streaming the code stuff, and we're gonna have a talk about what that's all about, what was involved in it, trials and tribulations, all that fun stuff. But before we do, week in review. Kristen, how was your week?
Again, pretty hectic. Helped a lot of people with some database issues, Postgres, of course, doing consulting. And for my app, I released two big features. One is related to having volunteers help with doing fundraising pages. And another one is staff notifications when particular transactions come in. So those were two big features that were released, but inevitably what happens once I release them, there's tweaks. So I spent a fair amount adding featurettes to each of these to give a little bit more features to them. So that's mostly what my week consisted of. What about you?
Fun. Well, I had we didn't have a good holistic view of code quality. Hey, Colin, welcome to the show. So I wanted to put some things into the CI process to help us with that. So I've been implementing Ruby Critic and Skunk and Brakeman and Simple Cov and getting all that worked into the automated CI process, and then shipping the artifacts up to S3 so I can pull them down and aggregate them and then put them someplace where I can present them in a full report for every PR that we do. And I've made things more complicated for myself than they probably need to be, but it's one of those things where we really need some metrics on our code to pay attention to that stuff. So that's been kind of my week. How about you,
maybe
Aaron?
Choose one tool.
Well, it was one of those things where
do the next
it was one of those things where once I got it figured out for one, the rest of them are almost free, so might as well.
Okay.
So Aaron, how about you?
My week has been hectic, but not very productive. I have had COVID since last Monday. So yeah, we're going on 10 days here, stuck at home. I'm feeling okay, but obviously can't go anywhere. And unfortunately, my wife and our two little kids also got it. So we have 16-month-old twins. And I tried to mask and stay away from them, but our house isn't that big, and so everybody got it, and so we're just kind of all down for the count. So this is really one of the first things I've done since last Monday that's not taking care of kids and or being sick myself. So kind of a rough 10 days here, but I think we're on the other side.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. Hope the wife and kids get better. And hey, fellow twin dad.
That's right.
Mine are a little bit older than yours. They're almost 20. So.
Oh yeah, just barely then. So you know exactly what I'm going through with two 16-month-olds.
Yeah, and especially two 16-month-olds. That's the pits.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, we're very appreciative that you're here with us, especially after been struggling with the zombie plague for a week. That's never fun. That thing sucks. Yeah. It still sucks. 3 years later, it still sucks.
It does. This is weirdly my first time to get it, and I can confirm that it sucks.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the meat of the show. I know that, I've had a lot of people ask me about live streaming, and there aren't a lot of kind of live stream talk show type things. And there actually aren't a lot of live stream coders. There are more of those, certainly, the talk shows, but live streaming is not something that's, I guess, very prevalent in the coding community. Mm-hmm. It's starting to become more, and a lot of people want to find out, well, what is that like? What do I have to do? And I know that it's really kind of intimidating to get into it because it seems like a lot of technology you have to learn, as well as you have to put your face on camera and you have to talk to people, and which is not usually a great thing for programmers because we're usually a bunch of introverts, and talking to people just, makes us cringy. But so, I wanted to start by kind of finding out what what got you interested in live streaming, and what kind of track did you kind of follow to get yourself to get yourself here, because there you are.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it is intimidating. I mean, just right off the top, it's extremely intimidating. I think my path kind of started with I wanted to do more video content. I feel like I'm I feel like I'm able to do video content pretty well and I enjoy it a lot. In a previous life, I was a tax accountant and I recorded like a whole course on um, introduction to financial accounting, and it's still, live out there. And I just really enjoyed like making video content. Um, and so I wanted to like get into doing live streaming, and part of it honestly was what you said, that there aren't that many people doing it. And so I kind of looked at the landscape of what developers are doing, and maybe like most of them are doing like their job, and that's kind of no public presence at all. And then it goes like Twitter, blog post, newsletters, and then at the very top of like the content is live streaming, because there's nobody up there doing it. And so I thought, okay, well, I can give it a shot. It's not a very crowded space, so I may as well give it a try. But I think the hardest part was just doing the first live stream, because it's terrifying. And I think I'm good on my feet and I'm able to, think on the spot. And I was still like terrified to go live for the first time. I did the thing where I go live in secret and don't tell anyone. And like I go live and then I go check it and make sure it's working. And then I'm like, oh man, that made me nervous. Now I would have to do that and like tell people, they would come and watch me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was like actually quite scary. And then I had a couple of people reach out to me, just a couple of like Twitter friends. They're like super encouraging and telling me, it's going to be so fun, you can do it. And I kind of just DM'd some of them, and sorry, still have COVID. I DM'd some of them and was like, hey, can you walk me through like this Twitch thing? And can you walk me through OBS? Because I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I just found that everyone was so supportive, and, I had a couple people walk me through their settings and their setup, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about there. But just getting started was the hardest part for me. And then once I did, it was a blast. Like it's a whole different kind of skill set besides and on top of just programming, but it's a lot of fun. Like if you find you enjoy it, I think you'll get hooked.
Yeah. So Marco says one of the biggest problem with live streaming coding stuff is that you as a viewer are lacking most of the context of the project. That is absolutely true. How have you found that to be in your streams so far?
Yeah, that is a weird thing, because people pop in and pop out, of course, and people will, I think people will background you because they're like kind of co-working. And so
Yeah.
you're working on your thing and they're actually like listening to you, but working on their thing. And then when they hear something interesting, they'll pop back over and they're like, wait, what's going on? Who's doing what here? And so I kind of view it as like it's not quite as efficient as doing it on your own, because you
Right.
are having to backtrack a little bit and say like, and I try to backtrack and say, okay, so here's what I'm trying to figure out, this thing, and this thing. And so I can't, every couple of minutes, I can't give full project context, because we'd never get anywhere. But every couple of minutes, I'm always trying to reiterate out loud what it is I'm trying to figure out. or what it is, like the local problem, if not the global problem, but the local problem that I'm trying to figure out. I try to reiterate that every couple minutes. And that helps me stay on track. And I feel like that also helps people who pop in or pop out or background me to like understand the specific problem I'm working on at the moment. And that is one of the things, like, it's a different skill on top of programming. You have to be able to like kind of do the narrative at the same time
Yep.
as programming. And that, like, that takes a little bit of maybe it takes skill, but it definitely takes practice. And I'm having to practice that a lot to be like, oh yeah, there are people watching me and I need to tell them what I'm thinking. I can't just think it and type it. Like, I have to say
Right.
it out loud.
Well, that was the biggest thing that when I started streaming, I started streaming games. But when I started streaming, the weirdest thing for me is, even if there's nobody in the chat or nobody watching, I have to be verbalizing what I'm doing.
Yeah, totally.
You know? And so I ended up talking to myself a lot, and I was like, am I the biggest idiot on the face of the planet? You know, I felt like such a fool for such a long time. And then you just start to realize that there's people lurking in the background watching you, and they want to hear what you have to say. They just don't want to talk, you know?
Yep.
But it
I
just
mean,
feels weird.
But also, I mean, you know, I remember you used to do videos when you were doing terrain stuff, and those were prepared videos. So it's not like you had an audience when you were doing it, but you knew once you produced the video, other people would be listening to it. So even if you don't have an audience at this moment, they may be watching a playback. So that's another reason to know, you know, you need to keep talking as if someone's there.
Right. But then you've got that trick of, you're sitting there and you finally get used to talking to yourself, and a chat pops up and you're like, oh crap, what do I do now?
Yeah, and it's like, that's another thing on top of it, is I feel like there's this culture of, especially on Twitch, and we need to talk about Twitch versus YouTube, but especially on Twitch, there's this culture of you know, interacting with the chat and like developing these kind of like inside jokes, these long running bits and that kind of stuff with your chat and with like the people that hang out with you. And to be able to, you know, I've got it, the stuff I'm working on one monitor and like the chat on another with OBS and everything on the other monitor, and being able to work on something and also kind of be entertaining, but also kind of talk to and acknowledge people in the chat. It is not easy. It's like there's, you know, it's like there's 4 or 5 different things vying for your attention all at the same time. And for me, like, I want to acknowledge the chat and say like, hey, thank you for being here. This is terrifying. Thanks for coming and like helping me out, basically.
Right.
But to do that over and over and over while still moving the content forward, that is, I don't think I've found the total balance of that yet. And I think there's some aspect to which the chat kind of hangs out, and like they talk to each other a little bit, and I don't have to acknowledge every comment, but acknowledging like when new people show up. And then there are all these weird milestones on Twitch of like, you know, somebody will do something, they'll spend points on something, and it's like, oh, it's good to acknowledge that. And so finding where I slot into the overall like Twitch ecosystem and subculture has been kind of a challenge.
Yeah. So Rebuild asks, does verbalizing the problem help you write better code? Is it like pair programming? I know my answer to that, but what's your take on that after having done a few of these?
For me, it absolutely does. It is literally rubber ducking live. I mean, you're kind of just restating the problem over and over and over. And I have found myself, saying out loud things like, okay, what am I trying to figure out here? And that's not, you know, that's not a false question. That's true. I'm actually trying to think like, what is the nugget of this problem? And what's the simplest way that I can prove that it is a problem? And when I say stuff like that out loud, it really does hone like my thinking space to, I could think about anything, but right now I'm speaking. What am I trying to figure out? And then I can answer it and then write the code that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think that too. It's anytime you're talking out loud, which is the whole reason that rubber ducking existed in the first place. Just talking out loud to something is helpful when you're thinking this stuff through. But then when you have chat answering you, that's even better. When you say, "What am I trying to figure out?" and chat says, "You're trying to figure this out." Oh yeah, that's brilliant. I love it. So one of the things that I wanted to ask too, I see. I have my opinions on where the value is for these type of streams. What do you think is the value, both to you and outside of you?
Yeah. So I've thought about this quite a bit. And I think there are a couple different answers. Some of them are more calculated than others. I think the most calculated one is there aren't a lot of developers streaming. And so if you can be in early at a place where there's not a lot of developers, who knows what's going to happen, but you're not competing against the whole world. I mean, even like if you go look at like, I don't even know what the Twitch category is, but it's like software or something like that. If you go look at the people streaming, there are a couple big dogs and then kind of a long tail, but the long tail's not that long. But then you niche it down to whatever like category you're going to be in. So for me it's Laravel. There are hardly any Laravel people live streaming. So there's like the Primogen and TJ DeVries and Rockstar, and they're all doing their big streams, doing all kinds of stuff. But you look at the Laravel live streams, and it's like a guy named Alex and maybe 2 or 3 others, and it's like I kind of know all of them. And for a community as big as Laravel to have like one handful of people streaming is kind of crazy to me. And so I think that's some of the value for me, is that I can try to be early to a space and hopefully provide some stuff that I think is interesting, if not entertaining. I think it's both. I try to make it both. I guess y'all tell me. But then I think there's also, oh, what do you have pulled up here?
This
You have
is
kind of
what's currently streaming in software and game development. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, and so when there are, let's say 5 or 10, Laravel or Rails developers, it's going to be hit or miss. Like throughout the week, most of the time, there's not going to be content for people that want to watch Laravel or Rails or whatever. And so I think that is kind of like an opportunity for people that want to stream. You're not competing against a whole lot, and that lowers the pressure a whole lot. I also think it's good for, like, it's really, really good practice for me and just like public speaking, live coding. Like I feel like that is always a good thing, a good skill for me to be building.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, somewhat it's like community building a little bit, because yes, there aren't a lot of people streaming, but there are a lot of people apparently that want to watch people stream. And so if you're willing to kind of brave the elements and go out and stream yourself, a whole group of people is going to come around and be like, hey, I'll watch this. Let's chat. Let's hang out. And I think that's good for these communities to have little watering holes where people are doing interesting things and other people can come and glom on and just like talk about it and make friends and learn new things. And the learning goes both ways. Like you said, I was trying to do something on stream, last week or the week before. Sorry, COVID still. And I had no idea what to do, and the chat was like, literally copy and paste this line that I'm gonna send you because this is how you do it. It was something with Docker, and I was in way over my head, and they're like, dude, just do it this way. And I was like, thank you so much. And so I think there's a lot of value for these communities like Laravel or Rails or Vue or React or whatever. There's a lot of value for these communities to like have some fun and hang out and see some content. And I don't want what I really don't want is the only content to be coming from um like 2 or 3 people. And so the more people that we can get producing this kind of content, I think the more comfortable people are going to feel to produce this kind of content and to try this kind of thing. And like if you log on and nobody is streaming Rails, it's like, oh, that's too bad. I wanted to watch some Rails. But if you log on and there are 10 people streaming Rails and 1 or 2 of them match kind of your personality or maybe your background, or they look like you or sound like you, you're going to feel more confident to be like, yeah, this is a place for me. Like I can hang out here. This is cool. And so I think having more, just like encouraging more people to just, take the leap into the unknown and stream, I think is good just for the community in general.
Yeah. Hey, Brittany, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Brittany.
Aaron is the best. Yes, I agree. Yep.
Brittany is the best.
Marcus says there's also so much framework language war going on in the chat of coding streams. I mean, while true, I think that's a skill of the streamer to kind of keep chat on track as well, which is hard to do sometimes, but that's part of the streamer's job, I think.
Yeah, that does happen. And it hasn't happened too much to me yet because most of the people that come and hang are like from my Twitter, and most of those people are Laravel people, and so we don't get too much. The closest we got was when I was futzing around with Docker, and I was like, this is terrible. I don't like this. And people were like, no, Docker's really good. And other people were like, no, it's terrible. So, but yeah, you're almost kind of like you're like a moderator, but you're also like almost like a teacher. Be like, guys, don't fight. Like we're having fun, or a parent. I would imagine we're having fun. We're hanging out. Everyone can have different opinions about React versus Vue. Like it doesn't matter. Let's just hang out. So yeah, you do have to kind of like, and I haven't had to boot anyone besides obvious scams and, but beyond that, I haven't had to boot anyone for like bad behavior or inappropriate comments or anything. And I don't look forward to that, but I imagine that that's a challenge that
at some point you'll have to bring the ban hammer down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't, and I think it's good for people to disagree in chat and have opposing viewpoints and talk about it and work it through. I just don't like when it gets to be nasty, name calling and, because like I'm not a Laravel person. Because I went and hung out at one of your chats because I wanted to see how you were doing, and I had no idea what you were doing in the code, because I don't know Laravel. I've never touched PHP. And my best understanding of Laravel is it's kind of to PHP what Rails is to Ruby. It's kind of the framework of PHP, I guess, the web framework.
Exactly right, yeah.
But I don't know that syntax. But I still had fun hanging out because, interacting with the chat, talking to you, just watching you do things and how you think about code. And that's kind of one of the big benefits I see to people doing stuff like this is younger programmers or people that are interested in being in programming can watch these things and start to learn how people think about code and the different ways to approach coding problems. And I think that's extraordinarily valuable because that's not something you're going to get from a book.
No, I think there's a lot of, I kind of catalog that as like detritus. It's like the little stuff that kind of, it just is kind of out there. It's not like the meat of the stream or in a lot of cases, the live coding talk. Like you're talking about one thing, but you're also doing everything else that you do in your normal life, which is you have a certain set of key bindings, and you have your editor set up in a certain way, and you like to follow a certain route to final code, and maybe that's like giant method that's super ugly, maybe that's TDD to start. And it's fun to see, like, as I was thinking about getting into streaming, I watched a bunch of other streamers, and it's really fun to see what you can learn that's not the thing they're teaching, or not the thing that they're showing. And I've had some people in the chat be like, whoa, how did you do that? And I'm just like, in PHP Storm, and my hands do a certain thing that I can't even remember anymore, and my code, does a thing, and I'm like, oh, maybe that is interesting, because it's like, it's built into my wrist and my fingers. But for other people, they haven't seen that PHP Storm feature before, and so that's kind of fun to like do the whole thing live, because people will pick up on stuff that you weren't even meaning to share, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Zool, oh man, I'm not going to get this right, so I'm just going to say Zool because that's the best I got. Sorry, you just correct me right there in chat how to say it, but we also have the Fortify versus Breeze. As long as it's like friendly, it's fine. I completely agree. I actually like hearing about.
I know exactly what they're talking about. That's a Laravel like internal, like the Laravel community is like, Fortify is better, no Breeze is better, and we're always like kind of battling it out. So yeah.
And I actually like seeing those things in chat because I like to learn new stuff. My big thing is, okay, you say this is better. Why? Because maybe I'll think so too if you can tell me why. Maybe I just don't know. Oh, I got it right. Cool. I'm on point tonight. Rebuilt. Is it more important for the audience to ask questions or to make suggestions? My answer to that would be yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, I don't care. As long as you're having fun and being like respectful, you can make suggestions, you can make jokes, you can ask questions. I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, don't be embarrassed to ask a question of like, what the heck is that, or something like that. But yeah, I don't it's weird, maybe the like the social feeling of being the streamer versus being the audience, but I feel on my side like we're just hanging out. Like, I'm just hanging out with some people whose only interface to me is chat, but I can talk back to them. But yeah, when you're in the audience, it maybe feels a little different. But from my point of view, it's like, yeah, say whatever you want. Let's hang out. Let's have some fun. If I'm dorking it up and making a bad call, you should tell me, because like I definitely make bad calls a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think as an audience member, part of the streaming kind of, not really etiquette, but a smart thing to do as an audience member is come to the stream and spend 5 or 10 minutes reading the room to see how the streamer and that chat room likes to run their show, right? Because the chat runs the show just about as much as the streamer does. Once there's a lot of chat in there, they're an integral part of the show. And so, spend a little bit reading the room, and then you'll figure it out. What I've seen from most developer type streamers, and we're the same way on this show, is we want more chat interaction. Asking questions, fantastic. Giving suggestions, awesome. Making funny comments, love it. Just go. Just don't be mean. That's all we want.
Yeah. Because you're out here on the stage all alone, and you're just like, will somebody please say something? Right. Yeah, I totally feel that.
Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, what did you decide to stream? Like, I tried to look up. My apologies. I tried to look up previous one, but it looks like they've already fallen off Twitch. Yeah. But I'm curious, because I think that's a question maybe other audience members have, is like, all right, if I wanted to get started streaming, what the heck am I going to stream? Is it only open source code? Is it my pet project? So
yeah.
What decision process did you go through, and what are you streaming?
Yeah, that is one of the questions that I asked these people that were like helping me in the DMs. It's like, how do you decide what to stream? The place where I landed is I landed on I want to stream stuff that I was going to do anyway. Because where I'm at in my life, with 2 small children and, work and projects and stuff, I don't really have bandwidth to adopt new projects just for the sake of streaming. I think there are great projects that you could do only on stream, and that would be a lot of fun. I'm not at that place. And so I decided, all right, let's take a survey of all the things that I have to do. Which of those could be most interesting to do on stream? And so specifically where that landed was I have a couple of Laravel packages that are open source. And one of them I just released recently, and so it's gotten a lot of adoption and therefore a lot of issues and pull requests. And so I was working through, on my first couple of streams, I was working through adding tests for those, trying to figure out how to architect certain things, and basically just doing open source work on stream. And that turned out to be a lot of fun because it was very technical Laravel stuff. And there were a few issues. There were a few issues that I looked at and I was like, I don't know where, I don't even know where to start on this one. And it may be pretty bad to do on stream. And so I just skipped it. And so before the stream started, I looked through the issues and was like, okay, I can I know where to start. I don't know how it's going to end up, but I know where to start. And that gave me enough confidence to dive into it on stream. And the other thing, you mentioned pet projects. I did some pet project streaming. So I have a service called Torchlight that does syntax highlighting. So it's like Highlight.js or not Prism. And I've been moving Torchlight from Vercel to fly.io plus Lambda. And so I did some streaming on moving that over to Fly and Lambda, and that was really fun. That was and that kind of caught some buzzwords, right? So I'm like, oh, AWS Lambda and fly.io, and so people were into that. So that I feel like was a fun thing to do, also because it's visual, because I'm deploying to Fly and trying to hit it in the browser. And so I have this feedback loop that's pretty tight. But basically just stuff I already had to do, and I just picked the most interesting out of my to-do list, basically.
Cool. Tina's here. Hey, Tina. Now we're not strangers anymore. Awesome. Meet new people on every live stream. Love it. That's one of the reasons I like to do this, is meeting new people. Marco R says, I feel like open source maintenance might be the most interesting to stream. This is also one of the biggest topics no one teaches you in book tutorial and that you can't see applied anywhere else. That's a good point. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I was purposeful on the stream to go through the whole process of making the PR, merging it myself, and then commenting back to the person who opened the issue. And that's interesting to hear Marco say that, because I didn't know if that was going to be valuable to show the whole, I'm an open source maintainer, this is what I actually do. But I like that point of view, because nobody teaches you in a book how to write a thank you for opening this issue, but I'm not going to fix it response. And is my response the right one? No, but if you watch 4 or 5 or 6 people write these responses, you'll find the one that you think is right. And so yeah, it's great. It's also great because all the code's open source anyway. And I think this next comment, starting to stream, having projects sort of NDA'd, and yeah, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what to do about not having a project that you could stream because of legal reasons. At that point, if you have a burning desire to stream, I would say spin up your own side projects. I've seen people rebuild their blog, which is right down the middle for developers rebuilding their blog again. But yeah, I don't know what to do. Obviously you can't stream NDA'd code. so I don't know what to do there.
Yeah, that's a tough. I mean, that's kind of the situation I'm faced with because I work for Shift 4, which is a large corporation. I can't show the code that I'm actually working on for work. I'd be fired in a half a heartbeat. But and for good reason. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing, because I was actually thinking about getting into this before I had even run into you, and because I want to do some funsy coding, right? Not stuff I have to do for work because that's work,
Yep.
right? I want to do stuff for funsies. I want to do a little side project. And I figured, well, if I want to work on that and I want to just learn some new Rails thing or some new gem or something like that to work into this project, I might as well find a time to stream it because somebody else may want to watch it. And if it's just one other person, that's fine. I'm doing it anyway, you know?
Yep.
So Zool, on the topic of it's just niche stuff that wouldn't have traction familiarity, I think that you would find that there are a lot of people that would still want to watch that because like when I was on Aaron's stream, when I was hanging out in the chat, I have zero idea what he was doing, right? Or anything about Laravel. But I was really interested in how he was approaching problems, how he was thinking about logic, how the chat was interacting with it. So it was still a really good experience. And having somebody there to give the audience that experience is extremely valuable, I think.
Yeah, I think I missed that last half of his comment about the niche stuff. I don't know that that matters so much. Like, I agree with you. I think if you're excited about the thing that you're working on, it's okay. Like, people are going to be hyped right along with you, even if they don't speak the language. I mean, this is kind of a bad example because he is like the LeBron James or some other famous sports figure, but I'll watch Primogen. And I mean, this is not self-deprecating. This is 100% honest. I have no clue what he's doing. Literally ever. No clue.
He mostly
Because
does
he's
Rust,
doing
I think.
he does Rust, he does Zig, he does all this stuff, and his keyboard looks like it's a freaking spaceship. And I'm
Right.
like, I have no idea what you're doing. And the reason it's a bad example is because who could ever do it as well as he does? But the point stands that, like, it's fun. He's excited. Like, he's excited to be there. He's having fun. Chat's having fun. And that's okay. Prime is a comedian. Yeah, he is. And I could never reach that level, but it's instructive because people watch it for him, not necessarily to like learn something about Rust, which I've still learned nothing about.
Right. Yeah, he is a show. He's an entertainer. Who
Maybe he's
happens
more
to be doing programming.
Yeah, maybe he's more entertainer than educator.
He absolutely is.
On stream, he is for sure.
Because he's frenetic. I mean, he's just all over the place. He's got all these wild transitions, and he moves into these other areas.
I gotta look up this guy.
Oh,
Okay.
He is unbelievably talented.
He is, but it's
gonna wear you out because we're all old. But he is unbelievably talented, and he is a freaking blast.
Watching him,
and you'll understand.
It's like kicking an anthill. He's just everywhere.
Yeah, but it's the most controlled chaos I've ever seen. Because he's got it all down. Like, he's like vibing with the chat and changing into scenes and doing little sketches and bits and stuff. And then he's like doing the Vim thing where he's typing on. It's crazy. Yeah, go watch it. Primogen. I think somebody can probably put it in the chat, but yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, it's nutty. But and honestly, like, I follow him. I'm subscribed to him. I love watching him. That is not where I would go to learn programming, though.
No.
So I actually like streams like yours more for the learning type thing because you're explaining what you're doing. You're not. It's not a big flashy show, and I don't mind some flash and some little entertainment things every once in a while. But spend time explaining what you're doing, explaining your thought process. You're not typing 8,000 words a minute and flying through pages of screens in a half a second, so people can follow what you're doing. And I think that's important because even if you can go as fast as Primeagen does, people, especially newer programmers, are never going to follow that.
No, and I think that's a good point. I specifically decided, like, I think Primeagen is maybe the most talented dev streamer, and I'm not going to try to emulate what he's doing at all. And so I watched a bunch of different dev streamers when I was about to get into it, and I saw everybody's different style. And I think I took maybe bits and pieces from everybody's like own style. But I'm not going to try to emulate anybody because, one, I'm not going to be that good at it. I could never do the Primeagen thing, and that's okay. Like, I don't have to. And two, if they want to watch the Primeagen thing, they should go watch him.
Right.
And so I don't want to be doing somebody else's bit, but worse. I want to bring my own spin and my own like personality and style to things. But you better believe I'm watching his show to learn things, and I'm watching TJ to learn things from him. And so I think it can be a temptation to go watch one of these big dogs and be like, I got to do it like that. I can't do that. That's way too hard. I would say, don't make that your bar, and don't like psych yourself out. Just turn on the camera and do what you would normally do, and you'll figure it out along the way. You'll develop your own style. You'll do your own thing.
Right. And I think that's important, because audience members for things like Twitch and YouTube live streams have gotten really savvy. They can tell when you're BSing them and when you're not being genuine. They understand that. So one of the most important things that I like to see when I'm watching any streamer, regardless of whether it's a coding streamer or not, is that they are actually being who they are and not being some TikTok face.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
That just drives me nuts. And the Primeagen is who he is, and that's great. That's not who I am. So I'm going to be who I am.
And he is internally consistent too.
Right.
You follow him on Twitch, you follow him on Twitter, you watch him on Front End Masters, and he is who he is all the time. And that's what I try to do too. Like on stream, on a live coding conference, at a presentation, on Twitter, it's easy for me because I'm just myself. And if you back yourself into a corner of like having a public persona versus a private one, it's going to be so exhausting, and I would not recommend it.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, my wife would say, you're not the same person on stream. You actually talk there. But, it's...
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess with streaming, you got to turn it on a little bit, crank the personality up a notch or two. Because part of that is you are there to entertain and or educate. People don't want to watch you if you're boring.
Yep.
But you also have to be genuine, and
be your genuine self.
Right.
And in terms of notching it up, you're just notching up your personality, not
right.
trying to imitate someone else.
Yeah. I'm definitely a little more animated when I'm doing this stuff than I am sitting in the living room. But
you can't crank up the introvertness. You have to crank that part down.
Yeah.
I think if I had to like prioritize something like getting on stream, I would deprioritize. I would not care so much about looking smart, having all the answers, or knowing exactly what you're going to do. I would say those things, not that important. What I would say is important is having fun, like being excited, and like bringing some energy. because sometimes you'll hear people get on a stream and it's just real quiet and real slow, and like that's a real downbeat tempo, which may be fine. That's not my preference. So I want to see people being like, here's what I'm working on, this is why I think it's cool, or this is why I think it sucks, and this is why I'm frustrated, but just kind of like amping it up a little bit. And the fear, I think, for a lot of people is, I'm going to get on stream and I'm going to have to know all the answers, not make any mistakes, not make any typos, and definitely not get stuck. Because if I get stuck, people are going to mock me. And that's just not been the case. Like, that hasn't happened to me. I've gotten super stuck and people have given me the code to copy and paste. And so, I mean, yeah, that's what I would say is like, be excited, have fun, and let everything else kind of just wash out.
So how long do you stream, and how often, like per week? Or I know with
Yeah.
recently it's not quite as much, but
Yeah.
what has been your normal schedule typically?
Yeah. So these past, 10 days I've gotten totally hosed. But before that, the schedule was Wednesdays and Fridays for 2.5 to 3 hours is kind of where I landed. I think I set my schedule at maybe 2 hours, and then I go for as long as I need to finish up. So kind of and I do it at so I'm in Central Time Zone. I do it 3 to closing time. So 3 to 5, 3 to 6, something like that. And there's a whole like thought process around how much and how often. I've kind of, unfortunately gotten, like I said, hosed with COVID, but I think it's really important to have a regular schedule. That's what I keep hearing from all these Twitch streamers that have been so helpful to me, is like, set your schedule and then stick to it. That's the best way to grow.
Yep.
And so that's what I've tried to do. And I think doing it in the afternoon, Central Time, is good enough, I think. And I don't know how optimal this is, but I think it's good enough to get a lot of the US at the end of their day, when it's like, I don't want to work, I want to just watch somebody on Twitch work, and I'll do some work also. But it's also early enough to get some of the European visitors, and so I don't know if that's the most optimum, but I like doing it then, because I think my natural energy starts to wane at the end of the day. But when the lights come on, literally, and the camera comes on and I'm on stream, I feel like I power through a lot more stuff in the late afternoon than I would maybe do otherwise.
Right.
Because now you got an audience.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like showtime, crank it up, like we said.
Well,
Yeah, your decision process sounds like ours for this show. It's like, what day you want to do? I don't know. When are you free? Wednesdays? Okay, that sounds good. What time? 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we kind of had the benefit that you did too, where there's not a lot of live stream podcasts, if you will, right? So
No.
Or
that
live show.
that wasn't we didn't have to battle with that. We just had to decide, when are people going to be available, and maybe we picked the wrong time, but we've gotten to the point where we've stuck with it for a year, and now people are starting to make themselves available because they want to be involved in the live stuff, which is great. That's the whole reason we do this, is because we want people to be involved in this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you said you've been doing it for a year, and now people are starting to get involved, and you just kind of blew past it. I think that's the real, like, with live streaming, with podcasts, with anything that you're trying to do, that's the real trick, man. You just have to keep going. Like, it it could maybe feel discouraging to show up and have one person on the stream. That is not a failure. That is not an embarrassment. Like, keep going.
Yes.
I think, whatever most podcasts flunk out after 7 episodes or something. They stop publishing. I think that's the right stat, but like 95% of podcasts end after episode like 7. I feel like that's got to be the case across all kinds of publishing, not just podcasts. Like live streaming, that's got to be the case. Making YouTube videos, that's got to be the case. If you can just keep going, if you can just stay alive, you're gonna, like, at some point, you're gonna outlast and you're gonna win. And I feel like that is the thing that nobody talks about, is in the beginning nobody shows up and you just gotta keep going.
Oh, dude, I can't tell you how many nights, how many weeks, 6 months into this, I was going, why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah,
This is a lot of
totally.
work, and it's doing nothing. But you just
Yep.
push through that, and eventually you get cool people like Aaron to come on your show, and you get lots of cool things going on Twitter, and people start paying attention, and then they show up and they start talking. And that's really what I was after, is being able to talk to people live on the show. Right.
Yeah. And Brittany says, yes, keep going. Speaking of Brittany, that's the first time I saw y'all's show. Is I saw she was on it live, and she tweeted out and was like, hey, I'm on this show live. And I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. And so I was eating dinner and I pulled up it on my phone and was chatting on my phone and was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like, man, that applies to everything. You gotta just keep going. And like knowing when to quit needs to be needs to be real. Like you need to have that decision like in your head, like when should I quit. What I think happens though is people they just fizzle out. Like it is okay to quit something, but you should quit something on purpose, not just because it's like, oh man, I'm just like nobody's showing up to my streams, I'm just gonna quit. Like,
Right.
I'm not saying you got to keep with everything that you start forever and ever, but like make it a conscious decision. Like, hey, I tried this thing, I don't think it worked, and I'm gonna try something else now.
Yeah,
but it's
make
not
sure
easy.
it fits with your priorities. And your
Yeah.
priorities shift during your life. Like you have kids. Okay, I have different priorities now, right?
Yep.
So, if you had started streaming 3 years ago and then you had kids, you might have had to say, okay, well,
Bingo.
I just can't do this because my priorities have changed.
Yep, exactly. I'm all about keeping going. I'm also all about consciously deciding like this thing doesn't fit in my life anymore, so I'm done with it. And that's
Right.
okay too. Yeah.
But the other the other blocker for streaming, I think, is the getting started. And we've heard some of those things kind of in chat tonight, which is I don't think what I'm doing would be interesting, or I don't like my voice, or I don't and I've heard other things too, like and I'm not trying to pick on people in chat. I said all those things too before I started streaming.
Totally.
And I've heard other things like I don't have the personality. I'm too nervous to be on camera. I can't, I don't know enough. I'm not smart enough. And I think the biggest thing for this, especially for live development, is I want to see people who get stuck and make me feel like, yeah, that they're up here doing this and they get stuck sometimes too. So I'm not a horrible programmer. Let me go hang out with them and we'll learn together. Right?
Yep.
And that's all of this is about community building. And you can't do that if you don't get out there and do it. So if you have an itch to live stream, just start.
Or also, if you're a viewer and you can actually help someone who is live streaming who's stuck on something, then that makes you feel good because, like, hey, I knew something. What do you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, man, this goes beyond live streaming to, again, all types of like publishing or putting yourself out there. There's just so much, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, I think there's just so much fear with putting yourself out there publicly. And rightly so, in my opinion. It's scary. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like you just need to quash that fear and like man up and move on. Like, no, that's not how it works. It's scary. But I think on the other side, of that fear, there's a lot of potential upside. Like, what you're getting by not streaming, or what you're getting by not submitting a conference talk, or by not publishing a blog post. You know what you're getting. You're getting safety and not having that thing published, right? That's fine. Maybe you decide that's what you want to do. That's totally legit. You don't know what you like you don't know what's on the other side of publishing. Like, and in this case, you don't know what's on the other side of streaming. I think there's potentially unbounded upside of like putting yourself out there publicly, because like we talked about, most people don't. And so the moment that you do, like, people look at you as if you're an expert, and you're like, I'm not an expert. I just decided to hit the button that says go live.
Right.
And so it's this really weird thing. Like, I'm sure y'all feel this with the podcast. When you have a podcast, people are like, oh, wow, you're the podcast guys. And you're like, we just talk to each other and we publish it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But there's this really weird, maybe it's not weird, maybe it makes perfect sense. There is a reality where the people who are able to either embrace the fear or overcome the fear and hit publish, they're awarded these kind of like unfair accolades, like, oh wow, they publish these great blog posts, or they do conference talks, they're like not in my league. And it's just like being able to, I don't want to say get over the fear, because I don't know that I've gotten over the fear, but it's just being able to like embrace that fear and kind of ride it and be like, you know what? I will want to have published blog posts. When I'm done with my career looking back, I will have wished that I like took a few risks and put myself out there and did some talks and did some live streams. And it's going to be scary, but I'm going to do it. And I think there's a real payoff. And I don't know what the final, like, I don't know what the ultimate upside is, but it's, I think, unknowable and unbounded. And I think for me, it's a lot of fun. Like, the act itself is fun, not to mention what could happen when people view me as this expert, which I don't think I've earned. I'm just the most public. Like, I'm not the best Laravel developer, but people think of me as a good Laravel developer because I'm like on Twitter talking about Laravel all the time, or I'm like giving conference talks talking about Laravel. There are tons of people that are way better at it than me. I'm just more public. And that can feel unfair, because people might look at you and be like, well, I know more than that guy. But it's like a two-pronged thing. How much do you know, and how much are you willing to like share what you know with the community? And you can know more than everyone and never share it and feel like this is not fair, this is frustrating. Or you can decide, I'm going to embrace that and just start sharing. And it's just like, everybody's like, oh, wow, you're so smart. You're like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I just pushed the button.
That's, yeah. And I think it's helpful for the community too, to see people say, look, I have no idea how to do this. Maybe I can get some help here. Right. Because then the people who are looking at you going, oh, maybe I can do this because I don't know everything either, but he doesn't know everything. So I could do this too. And I think that's an important part of the streamers that put themselves out there and do that, is encouraging other people. Yes, you can do this too.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be the best programmer in the world. You don't have to be the most entertaining person on the planet. You don't have to be a wizard with stream technology. Speaking of which, look, I'm going to put this offer out there now. If any of you want to get into code streaming and you don't know how to get started with the tech, PM me. I will help you. I will tell you what you need to do to get started. I will do what I can to help you stream this stuff, because I think it's important for the community, especially younger developers, to see people going through these thought processes and start understanding that and start building this community. And I can tell you the biggest benefit for me on the other side of the publishing is that there is not a single person in this chat, and we haven't had a single guest on this show that I knew before we started this show. So the fact that I get to meet all these really cool people and talk to them and start building friendships with them is amazing. And that's a huge benefit to the person who streams and to the people who are in the audience.
Yeah, like, again, back to Brittany. The only way that I knew her was like hanging out on Twitter and talking about Laravel and Rails and, making jokes with people, and finally got to meet her in person. And like, none of that would have happened if I were just like hanging out privately, being bitter that I know everything and nobody recognizes me for knowing anything.
Yeah.
So like getting over that fear and just starting to interact with the community. And that doesn't have to be, streaming or publishing blog posts. That can just be literally interacting with people. You can come to a stream and start interacting and hanging out, and you end up with friends. And like,
Right.
I have never written Ruby in my entire life, and I have so many friends in the Ruby community just because like we're all online together and we're just kind of like hanging out, and it's so freaking fun. So yeah, I would absolutely, there's a huge benefit, and that's like making friends, and it's
Right.
great.
And I mean, just putting yourself out there enormously benefits the community. Yeah, Brittany, preach it.
I love the Ruby community too. You
Yeah.
guys have adopted me as your own.
We are very friendly people. I have never ever met a Ruby person at any conference or anything, online or anywhere, that has been less than gracious to me. Not once.
Well, I went to a Rails conference, like I said, literally having never written a line of Ruby code. I've never run Ruby locally. I went to a Rails conference, and everybody was just so freaking nice to me, and nobody, like, they knew that I was a Laravel developer, and nobody made fun of me, or like even like in a joking way, like, what are you doing here? It was just, everybody was like, this is great. It's so nice to meet you in person. I'm so glad you're here. And yeah. So I love y'all's community. I ran a workshop. I did. I helped run a workshop at Rails, which was wild. So yeah, there's a lot of like, I think putting yourself out there bestows a lot of benefits on you. And I feel like one of the ones that people don't talk about is the friendships thing. Like, people will come to you and say like, I know who you are. And you're like, great, let's be friends then. Like, I don't have to do all that work. People are coming to me, and I'm like, thank you. Can we be friends? Because that would be amazing.
Right. And that's a big boon for us introverts, which is what,
Yes.
99.9% of the development community.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to grow your friend base, stream some stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Or like Brittany said, build a shed. I'm in my shed quarters, and I decided, like, I built out this little office in my backyard, and I thought, I'm just going to share the whole thing on Twitter. Like, who knows why? Because, I think it's cool. I think it'll be fun. I'm just going to share it on Twitter. And people now come to me and they're like, oh, dude, I saw your shed. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, right?
Yeah, I spent some time rooting around in there, and it was fun. And it's not something I would ever do. But
see,
I loved, it's not something I would even ever think about. But because you shared it, I was like, oh, this is really neat. I wonder what he's doing next. Oh, what the,
Totally.
So,
yep.
Well, oh man, it is already, wow, we are past time. The more we have guests on the show, the more I'm finding that I so enjoy talking to the people that come on here that I completely lose track of time. When it's just me and Creston going over a topic and we've got this structured thing, I'm like looking at the clock going, oh, we got to do another 15 minutes for this to be worth it. But but when the people come on the show, I just completely lose track, and I'm ending up, oh gosh, we have to stop the conversation because time's up.
Yeah, I wasn't even keeping track, so this has been great.
Yeah, which is, I think, is accomplishing our goal of, we just want this to be a hangout where people can have fun and feel comfortable talking and hanging out and sharing stuff.
Well, mission accomplished from my perspective. This has been super low stress and a lot of fun, so I really appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and we very much appreciate you coming on here, even though you've got the plague and probably aren't feeling 100%. But
no, but I do have. I don't know if you've noticed. I have a foot pedal to hit mute, because I'm just coughing all the time. So I have this little pedal I can just bam, and I can do my loud coughs. So that's been helpful.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I think I would. It might be a really good show to have you back on sometime to talk about the gear that you have to deal with.
We could nerd out about that for a
Yeah.
long time. That'd be fun.
So
I'll do a little teaser for my reappearance. I, for some reason, which I will describe, bought a little keyboard so that I can have like an actual soundboard, so I can play like Michael Scott quotes during my stream and stuff like that. So we'll go over that later.
Oh,
but it's
that's awesome.
It's too much.
I even want to find out about that one.
It's just enough. It's just right.
Yeah, so we can talk about that stuff. But like I said, and Aaron offered this too, if anybody needs help and wants to get started as a streamer, Marco, you can't be a real streamer without a stream deck. Yes, you can, and I can show you how. There's just PM us. I am more than happy to help people get started doing this. It's not as complicated as it looks. Really is not. It's also not terribly expensive. You can get started for less than $100, probably even less than that, but it's not expensive. So the biggest thing is just putting yourself out there, and just, in spite of the fear, just do it. And I will tell you, having done this for years, I still kind of freak out before every show a little bit. It's just, it's just, and before I did my first ever stream, I was an absolute wreck. But you just go out there and do it, and eventually you get kind of comfortable with it.
Yep, I will echo that. And so if you need help getting set up, let me know. Also, when you do your first stream, let me know. I will show up.
Yep, me too, for sure.
I will come hang out in the chat and hype you up, and it'll be a blast.
Yeah, because I know the feeling of spending 2 hours on a stream and not a single soul ever shows up or chats with you. That's just disheartening. And most every streamer goes through that, but it's nice to at least have one or two friends in there at least talking to you, So yeah, let us know when you do your first stream. If you're going to get out there, let me know, give me some links. We will publish it, and I will do everything I can to be there if schedule allows, to support you, because I think it's important for the community and the developers do the streaming. So anything we can do to help, just throw it up there. So thank you, Aaron, so much for being here with us tonight. This was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. Thank you, chat. You were very supportive and very fun to talk to, and had lots of good questions and statements. We always love, like I'm saying, streamers love when you guys are in there saying things. We want to know what you have to say. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, and you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. Those things are free. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. If you're watching this on Twitch, give us a follow. That's also free. Still makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. The best thing you can do to support the show, if you want to support us, is to tell your lovely friends, because I know you lovely people have lots of lovely friends, and bring them next Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Next week, we've got Drew Bragg coming on the show.
Nice. So
that's going to be fun. I've been talking to Drew for a while, and we still haven't decided on what topic we're gonna talk about. So, just follow us on Twitter, and we'll let you know. You can follow us and see, even person who's been doing this for a long time. I can't speak the English good. But yeah, at Ducky Dev Show on Twitter. That's the handle. It's anyway. Yeah, follow us on there. You can get all the information. I try to keep people updated. I suck at Twitter because I'm one of them old fogies that doesn't do the Twitter thing, but I try to get on there and keep people updated. Also, if you are interested in checking out Aaron's Twitch channel, we've put links to his Twitch in the description on YouTube. So they're down there so that you can link right to it and don't have to do a lot of fancy searching and stuff. It is really fun, so I would highly recommend going and checking out one of his streams. It's fun to hang out there, even if you don't know PHP or Laravel. It's a good time, so go check those out. So we will see you with Drew Bragg next week, next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Aaron, thank you very much for hanging out with us. And until next week, happy programming.
Happy programming.